When we try to solve the equation x squared equals to 1, we cannot find any real number solution satisfy the equation. So we have to expand our number system to a complex number. So because of that situations, we want to define a new number, which is called I, equal to square root of -1, so that I squared is going to be equals to -1. So back to the equation x squared equals to 1, when we try to solve it, x will equals to I. And that is the complex number. So what is complex number going to look like? Any complex number is going to look like in the form that a plus bi, where a and b are real numbers, and I is a symbol for the complex number, also defined it as I equal to square root of -1. In this form, A called the real part and B called the imaginary part. Here is a diagram talking about the relationship between different type of number. In general speaking, complex number is a larger number system, and real number is part of the complex number. And complex number has three type of numbers. One is pure complex number, another one is pure real number, and then the third one is the pure imaginary number. Okay, in this picture, we're actually combining the complex number and the pure imaginary number together. But that by definition, -4i is the pure imaginary number, and 3 plus 2i is a complex number. So when b equal to 0, then the a plus bi is going to be pure a. We're going to say is going to be a real number. But when a equal to 0, then the a plus bi will become to bi, which is called a pure imaginary number. And then the a plus bi form is going to called as the standard form for a complex number. When we're talking about complex numbers, we can comparing any two complex number by saying do they equal to each other. So if I want to say two complex numbers are equal to each other, for example, a plus bi is equals to c plus di, and those two are two complex number. So we have to say a is going to equal to c, in the same time b is equals to d. So for example, that 2 plus 3i will equal to 2 plus 3i. Last part about the definition is more about habits on how to write complex number. Is when I have a rational number mixed with the complex number, for example, square root of -3. So we can write it as a complex number as I square root of 3, where I is from the negative sign inside the radical symbol. However, we normally don't write in the way that square root 3i, so I is after the square root 3, because it's really confusing. Are you talking about square root 3 times I? Or because of the sloppy of the handwriting, it might means square root of -3i. Both 3 and I is under the square root symbol. And to avoid that confusion, we normally write I first and then the square root symbol. So for that situations, if I have a is a positive number greater than 0, then when I try to rewrite the square root of negative a, I will write as I square root of a. Now we can look at some examples. So the first example I have is I want to solve the equation x squared equal to negative 144. So I'm looking for which number is going to, which number squared equal to negative 144. Because of the negative sign from the equation x squared equal to a negative number, I know that x number, or the solution is going to be a complex number. So inside my scratch paper, I'm going to thinking about which number squared will equal to 144, which I know is going to be 12. And because it's negative 144, so I know that my answer is going to be 12i. Because 12i multiplied by 12i, I will got 12 times 12 multiplied by I times I. 12 times 12 is 144 and I is negative 1. So it's equal to negative 144. So the second example I want to find is I want to simplify square root of negative 5 times square root of negative 30. I will follow the radical way to multiply them, which is square root of negative 5 times negative 30. And I will end up with positive 150. And then positive 150, I can break it into 5 times square root of 6. Okay, because 150 can break it down into 6 times 25. However, this is not the correct answer. Okay, so now if I'm going to repeat it using the complex number, so I'm going to rewrite square root of negative 5 and square root of negative 30 into I square root 5 times I square root 30. And I will still have the square root of 5 times 30 and then multiply by I squared. And I got square root of 150, but I squared will equal to negative 1. So I will end up with negative 5 square root of 6. Okay, so here I'm just going to, I want to point it out that when you have square root of negative 5 or square root of negative number, you have to first convert it to a complex number using the I symbol, because it will make the final answer wrong if you don't do it. So this part is the wrong one, and then the correct one is we have to first write it into the complex number form and then multiply it, keeping the I square calculated as negative 1 and then stick it to the front to make the entire answer negative. So the next one we want to do is still simplify, but this time I want to simplify square root of negative 20 over square root of negative 2. As we talked about before, we have to change it into complex number first. So I will have I square root of 20 over I square root of 2. For this situation, I and I will divide it out. So we will end up with square root of 20 over square root of 2, which equals to square root of 20 over 2, square root of 10. The last example we want to do is I want to write a 15 minus square root of negative 75 over 5 in the standard form a plus bi. So to do it, I first have to rewrite the square root of negative 75 into I square root of 75. 75 equals to 5, 5, and 3, where 5 and 5 will give me a 25, which is a perfect square. So I can rewrite the I square root of 75 as 5i square root of 3 over 5. Now I'm going to divide 15 by 5 and 5i square root of 3 by 5, and that with 3 minus I square root of 3.